Welcome everyone back to the Secret Sunday session, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Disordered series. We're up to episode 4 today, and in this episode, we are going to open up one of the most overlooked conversations in recovery and family trauma, which I believe is something that is not spoken about enough, which is the impact on the siblings, the fathers, and the people standing in the background who are often carrying pain too, but don't get enough recognition in terms of support. And we often just don't talk about them enough. So we're going to dive deep into that today. So this episode is about the ripple effect that no one prepares families for, as well as friends. We also explore what healing can look like when families finally widen the lens, because recovery isn't just about one person getting better, it's about everyone being allowed to be seen, be heard, and go through treatment and recovery of why that person may have chosen an eating disorder in the first place. And a lot of things can come up during recovery from an eating disorder, body image issues, disordered eating that can sometimes be quite surprising and confronting for families. And we're not supported or told how to navigate that. So it's important that we have this conversation today for the siblings that are forgotten, the dads and the father figures out there who sometimes don't have the words, the partners who have to sit on the sidelines, and for anyone, whether it's friends or extended family, who carry the heavy silence with the person that is going through it. Today, of course, this is a mother duo series. So I'm going to welcome my mum, Kendall, in once again. Mum, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Ash. Thank you.
Uh, this topic. Now, in our situation, based on our lived experience, I feel that we both navigated my eating disorder in the front seat, where you were my primary carer during that time. So it meant that you were there providing that 24/7 support. So in this episode, we're almost talking about the perspectives that we both don't have. And I really want to dive deep into how I think my brothers were impacted, how my dad and your husband were impacted during this, and how that took a toll on our family that was often not discussed. Because even in the work that we do with the charity, it's always you and I, and how you and I's story developed, and how we're now helping people. But our entire family went through that. And it's important to recognize for not only the people that are going through it now, but for ourselves to recognize that there are more than just us as part of the story in my journey to recovery. So I think to kick us off today, I want to bring up a certain experience that for me brought the whole family involved in my recovery from anorexia almost 10 years ago. And I want to bring up specifically the moment where you sat us all down at the family dinner table after we went to the first psychologist appointment and I was diagnosed with anorexia, and what your thought process was around in first bringing this insight, this information of my diagnosis to the entire family. Like, what were your thoughts around how was I supposed to not only tell the family what I was going through, but you had to also, in a way, educate them because, as you've said from the start, you didn't really know much about eating disorders or anorexia. So, how do you approach that conversation? And do you believe you did it successfully?
Um, look, I don't know. I don't know if I did it successfully because we were all just in shock, I think, at that time, because none of us knew what anorexia was. I mean, we'd heard about it, but we didn't actually know what it was in detail. To be fair, we're getting told what it is by someone that probably hasn't really experienced it either. So we're getting a professional perspective of an illness that someone hasn't lived. And that's, in hindsight, probably the worst education we got at that time. But going back to telling the family about it, as you know, I've always been a person that loves to have an open book in our family, and I love to have conversations about things that are going on because I don't like to hold secrets in, and I don't like to hold grudges and things. So I've always been a really good communicator with the family. You might disagree, but in my head, I was. But, sitting everyone down at that time with the limited incorrect information that we were given, I thought in my head was the most sensible thing to do because prior to this diagnosis, everyone was whispering in the background, what's wrong with Ash? Blah, blah, blah. Is she okay? So everyone was kind of wanting an answer, I suppose. So um, sitting everyone down and giving them the facts was a way of making sure that they got all the correct information from me and Dad, and that the way forward was going to be pretty rocky, and we wanted to prepare them for the journey ahead. Or, at that case, we were told the statistics of you not making it through, and then, maybe preparing them that you weren't going to be around. So,
How did the conversation, because I remember that being at the dinner table and that sort of coming out, but there was no real way forward of what that looked like in our family. And I know we were going through family-based therapy, but there was no real light or insight into what we were all supposed to do now. And I think that came from a position of you guys also didn't know what to do. Do you remember calling Dad? Because obviously you took me to the appointment and you were sitting there. Do you remember having the conversation with Dad afterwards around what had happened and what primarily was wrong with me?
after we'd been to the psychologist,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I remember sitting in the car and just, I, I still remember that. I was just sitting in the car going, what the hell is just happened, or what the hell is this, or what, um, yeah, I think in one way, I was at that stage, in one way, I was relieved because I honestly thought you had some sort of cancer. So in one way, I was relieved that it wasn't that. And in another way, I was kind of totally shocked and overwhelmed with what it was, because my only version of someone with anorexia when I was growing up was, the young lady that Ray Martin interviewed when I was young. And yeah, and it wasn't a very good outcome at that stage. So that's the only story that I kind of knew of about people having an eating disorder or anorexia. So, it was overwhelming to try and figure out what it actually was. And yeah, I just remember ringing Dad and going, she's got this diagnosis. And he was just like, well, what is it? And I'm like, well, I actually don't know. We've been given a book to read.
Mm.
And, you know, that was back then that, as I said, we were given incorrect information at the start on how to deal with it, and we were probably given not much information about the illness itself and what it entails due to the lack of knowledge of the person treating us at the time. And, who's got time to go and read a massive book on an illness when you're dealing with the illness as well? So I relied on my own research and reaching out to people through connections that had experienced it before. But everywhere I turned, I was just hit brick walls. Nobody wanted to talk about it. So
Mm.
it was quite scary and it was quite overwhelming. And it was not only are you dealing with trying to get the correct information to be able to help you, but you're also dealing with you, the patient, who doesn't want to get better as well. So it's a really difficult time for family, and then family are turning to you for answers, and you don't really have any answers. all you got to do is get through the day. So, yeah, it is a difficult time at the beginning. And I
Mm,
think it's really important that you get the correct information for that person.
mm. How do you manage siblings and, say, partners that you express that there's a concern? As you mentioned, like the statistics are not great for people that develop anorexia specifically, but any eating disorder. How do you manage their distress and concern around potentially losing someone that they love while you've also got to focus on keeping that person alive?
I think it's just awareness and education, Ash. Like, I don't know if you remember, but we had someone staying with us at this time. We had a boarder. We had your two brothers. We had your grandparents. There was a house full of people that were all giving their opinion on things. And it was a really difficult time to just block that out and try and concentrate on getting the facts and what worked for you. So, um, in hindsight, knowing what I know now, and I suppose dealing with the illness, because, once you were diagnosed, the illness actually just really came out because I think there was no more hiding, there was no more secrets. You were just, okay, everybody knows now, so I can just go on with it. Um, so it escalated as well. But I think, men just want to fix it. And I think that's really hard to navigate for the dads and the males and the boyfriends and the brothers. Um, they just want to know what the answer is and how do we fix it, and let's just do that. So that was a really difficult time trying to educate the males that we can't just fix it. It's actually a process and we've got to work it out. It's an individual um, experience for this person, and when they're going through it, what works for that, the person before mightn't work for you. So, it takes time and patience, and I don't think they have that. And so I think the easiest thing for me was to eliminate that.
Mm,
So for me, it was actually taking control of the family and being the I suppose the director of the director of management, and just saying, right, the boys still need to go to school, the boys still need to go to sport, the boys still need to have a normal life. So you look after them and let me look after Ash, and we'll catch up in between. So it's, looking back, it's probably it was like a trial separation, if you want to look at it that way, because I didn't really see Dad too much and I didn't really see the boys too much. Um, I think when I could, we swapped roles, but then it kind of sent you backwards. So
mm,
um, it is a really difficult thing to do because you've got to realize what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. And I think, I learnt that my strength was that I could tolerate the, I don't know, the torment that anorexia gave you and gave me. And I could tolerate that. I could learn to take it on board and not take it personally, where Dad couldn't.
mm,
Every time he saw you, you know, exercising behind closed doors or doing something that you weren't meant to, he'd be running to me, Ashley's doing this, like, you got to go, like, it was just, for him, it was too much. It was manic and he couldn't handle it.
mm,
So it was easiest just to eliminate that, because the more he did that to me, the more I got riled up that you were not following the process. And then I come and get angry at you and we all go 10 steps backwards.
mm. Yeah, I think it's important to note that because in working in the charity, a lot of fathers or father-like figures will come to us and say they feel such a disconnection from the person that's going through it, and they feel helpless and they feel like they've like just given up on me or don't love me anymore. And I really want to emphasize it's not that. It's not because we're trying to eliminate the father or we're trying to get rid of them. It's just because their model of care And it could be different. Some fathers or father-like figures could be different. But I know in my situation, it was nothing to do that I didn't want my dad, but in the way that at the time he was responding to what I needed just wasn't working. And that's okay. And I really want to emphasize like that's okay because it's only temporary and it was just what you need to do in order to get through recovery. And what I needed was say, Mum, your model of care and what you took and I needed that one person to take the lead. And I needed someone that was really good at structure and really good at separating themselves where I love my dad, but at the time he wasn't great at separating
He was
himself from it.
reactive.
Yeah, he was reactive because he cared so much and he
Mm.
just didn't want to see me suffering that he didn't know what to do other than just get reactive or like be upset and then be angry in a way that he only knew how to express his emotions, that he felt like he was losing his daughter and he didn't know what to do. And his model of care was, I just want to fix you. I just want you to get better, but I don't know how. And that mentality and that reaction to things was just not helping the situation in terms of my recovery for
Well,
that period.
well, it was for anorexia because that's what it wants.
Anorexia
Anorexia
loved
wants, yeah, anorexia wants to cause chaos and wants to cause disharmony. So,
it.
and that's what we realized is that the more we fought with each other and the more that everyone's opinions came in, we weren't concentrating on you getting better. We were trying to manage the crisis situation of everyone being angry and
Everyone's reactions.
yeah. So you then went, oh, I just missed a meal. How awesome's that?
Yeah, because we're
So
too focused on everyone else reacting to the
correct. And
situation.
everyone storms out and goes to their rooms and carries on and then crying and screaming and. So once we figured that out, I think for me, that's what I said. The process for me was easy, simple. You're really, dad's really good at looking after the boys and taking them to sport, and he enjoyed that. And that was his outlet. And for the boys, they enjoyed going to their sporting games. It was a release for them. Um, but I think, me staying with you and trying to manage that at home was the best scenario for us because um, it just worked.
Mm.
And everyone seemed to be in harmony. Didn't mean that they didn't care, they weren't worried about you or what was going on, but then I just constantly would update them when I could. Or if I needed their help, I would ring. I'd say, Dad, say to Dad, look, I'm not coping. I can't, I need you back here. And he would
Mm.
drop everything and do that. And I think that's where having really good communication and really clear boundaries and really clear guidelines of I can do this, but I can't do that really works for family dynamics going through an eating disorder. And even brothers could have a role, right? But your
Mm.
brothers, well, one of them was way too young.
Mm.
And, your
But
other,
I kind of liked in the sense the roles that they took on that weren't part of the recovery, that were like not weren't part of the recovery, but were different
hmm,
in the sense that they never asked me because you were almost like the PA of my recovery. You took care of everything. That they came to you and asked for updates so that when we did talk, it wasn't about my eating disorder. It wasn't about, especially once we got, I want to emphasize this, it was once we understood everyone's role, that's when it seemed to work a lot better. Beforehand, it was messy and chaotic and it didn't work, but it took time to get to this. And when we got to this, when then I could just be a sister to my brothers and they could distract me and we played
yeah.
games together or we do fun things together that it didn't make me feel like everything and everyone was so concerned about my eating disorder that that's all I had. It made me feel like there was more to my life. Like you were just in the front seat of organizing everything, communicating that with everyone. I didn't have to worry about that. You made sure that you were keeping everyone sort of updated on the situation so that when I had interactions with them, they weren't then, well, they didn't show it to me that they were worried or they were upset or they were dropping comments like, oh, you need to get better or you need to be eating this because everyone knew that that was your role and that was on you.
Yeah, and those
So,
comments came, or those questions came to me and
mm,
not you. And that
yeah.
was the thing, you know. I
At the
remember,
start, they came to me, and that's where it was like,
yeah, and that's where it's, you know, it is hard, and because you're trying to keep the secret and you're trying to defend your actions, and they're not believing you, so it causes a rift, you know, and and let's be honest, it probably still is there a little bit today. You know, the boys still probably think you do keep secrets from them, and that's only from the history of what we've gone through.
mm,
And that will get better over time
mm,
as you all get older and you all, do your own things. But, I think we'd be lying if we said that it didn't affect family dynamics, because it does.
mm,
And it's going to take time to mend those. But I think you've got to be open and honest and keep good communication. And yeah, give everyone a role. Like, I used to say to Ryan, your one role is to make sure your sister has fun. You
mm,
know, when she needs a distraction, go and play a game with her or go and watch Team. At the time, I think you were watching, we watched Team Wolf or funny movies or whatever. And he loved that because that was right up his alley.
mm,
And yeah, I think that that's not spoken about enough because the whole family can be involved. It doesn't mean they have to be involved in the therapy or the treatment. They can be involved in other ways.
mm. How do you respond in ways where sometimes family members might not want to take on roles and it is too much for them and it is too hard for them? How do you navigate and respect that?
Well, I think you have to respect it. You can't force someone to take a role on. And I think that's where you've got to be very careful with, family-based therapy too. I mean, at the beginning, that didn't work for us because you were too far in, I'd like to say. Um, and everyone was just getting more and more agitated or aggressive with it because of the frustration. But I think, you got to remember that everyone has a lot going on in their life. The boys had school stuff going on, that we were unaware of, and adding that load to, you know, a a really, I suppose, teenage time is a tough ask sometimes. So I think you've just got to look at them individually, and if they're not coping with the situation at home, then maybe, you need to seek professional help for them individually. Or, we were very lucky because at the time there were school counselors at school that were able to help the boys and they were able to go there and talk to them.
Mm,
But, in and it's a tricky time, right? Because in other cases, it can force them to turn to other things to
mm,
cope when they don't talk about it. So it is really, really delicate situation. And I think as parents, you do have to be mindful of the other siblings in the family and make sure that they do get the attention that they need as well. And that's where I found splitting the roles helped because dad could concentrate on them.
mm. How how did you devote time though as well? Because we look at the current environment that we're in where there is a big emphasis on parents or children specifically getting time with the mother and time with the father. And based on our situation, the boys got very minimal time in pivotal years with you in their life. How do you communicate that? Or how do you also stress that their importance in your life and stress that they are seen, they are heard, and they are given time and attention?
Well, look, for us, we were lucky. Your grandparents and my grandparents took a lot of that load up because dad went back to work and I was able to work from home. So that helped. But when we were away, when we were in hospital, you know, the grandparents stepped in and looked after the boys, and we used to swap, if you remember. Like I used to look after you Monday to Friday, and Dad would come up and have weekends, and I'd go home and have the weekends with the boys. So, you know, you just got to learn, I suppose, to manage it the best way you can and to just reassure them that you're still there for them and you love them. But at this particular time, that one person that needs you just needs you a little bit more. And it's not going to be forever, but we have to, you know, we have to get you through it. Otherwise, we're going to lose it. We're going to lose you. And none of us wanted that. So I think the boys were willing to sacrifice some of that time, knowing that you were going to get better.
How do you prioritize your relationship during that time? Like, do you remember having a conversation with Dad that your relationship needs to be put on the back burner?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And that's just what you have to do. Um, yeah, and that comes down to good communication and having a good relationship and a good understanding of each other. Um, you know, it's not to say I didn't miss him or I didn't, you know, I didn't want to do this on my own, but that was the only way that we could get you through it. Because I think if both of us did it, A, we'd probably be broke, and B, we probably would be fighting more because you can't have two bosses. One has to be the boss and one has to be, you know, less than a boss. I don't know what that word is I'm looking for, but
One
one,
has to lead and the other one.
yeah, he has to follow. Because, and it's not forever, but I just think, but I'm just talking in our case, but in our case that worked, and I spoke to Dad probably 3 times a day, every day,
Mm,
and you know, it's not as if I wasn't without him. I just wasn't physically, we weren't physically together, but you know, it kept our family together, and that's the sacrifice you do.
mm. How do you then go about, because it was something that came up regularly when we were going through therapy, especially when I came out of hospital, around reconnecting with the family. So after the refeeding has occurred, and I would say the intensity of the illness has sort of moved on, and you're now in the stage where I'm gaining a bit more independence and I'm getting more out into owning my own recovery and pursuing that on my own. And you're trying to then get back to what normal looks like for a family. In our situation, I knew that took a big toll on Dad because it often came up that I was neglecting him or I was pushing him away or that I didn't want him around. What did you think it was?
I just, I, look, I don't think any of you kids, and I'm not just isolating any of the three of you, like being told what to do, or like maybe the way Dad speaks on how he wants things done. Um, and that's, you know, that could be part of it. But I honestly think even in recovery, you still got that little anorexic voice in your head that you didn't like to be told what to do or how to do it.
Mm,
So I don't think it was so much as you didn't want him around. I don't think you liked the manner in the way he spoke on how he wanted things done.
mm,
Because when you think about it, you kind of gone through a transition and you've got your own strength and personality and um, independence back a little bit, and you knew what worked for you, and then you've got me navigating all of that for you, like letting you have a little bit of freedom here and there, and maybe because Dad didn't really experience all of those transitions, he's come in from the outside going, no, you need to do it this way.
mm,
And it's a rebellion. And every child rebels against their parents. I mean, I remember when I did it. And it's not so much you don't want them around, it's just that you've got your own personality and independence, and you don't like being told what to do. And that is part of your eating disorder. The eating disorder hates being told what to do.
It's almost heightened.
Yeah, so, it could be a little bit of triggering of that. I mean, and that took a long time for Dad to understand that.
Mm. I definitely remember it was more about the delivery
Mm,
rather than him. And I want to emphasize that to anyone that is listening, that it's not personal. It's sometimes just the way things are delivered and you don't resonate with it. Rather than if someone, I always think about as if someone is coming at you and it feels like they're attacking you, or they feels like it's coming from a forceful or a more heightened manner. You're going to respond in a very different way than if someone's saying the exact same thing, but it's coming from a compassionate and a more sympathetic manner. You're probably going to be more open to talking about it. And I remember, yeah, Dad being quite reactive because he just didn't understand. He just wanted to fix it. And my only way, I mean, my reaction to things was I just shut down.
mm.
I didn't communicate well at all in those early stages. I was not great at communicating, hands down. I would just shut people out, not talk to people, ignore people because I didn't know how to express how I was feeling and I didn't feel safe enough to say how I felt. Until obviously we went into those 2-hour therapy sessions where it just felt like I unleashed everything. Um,
And I think it's important to add here that a lot of people have this perception that you go to hospital, you get treated in hospital, and you're going to come out of hospital and you're better. And that's something that comes up a lot. And that was probably the biggest learning curve for us, is that was when the whole process just started.
yeah, I was about to say it was just the beginning.
Because you were then the hospital, all the, the hospital's job is to physically get you better, well, right? Physically, make sure that your body's functioning correctly and that you have mental capacity to be able to cope with what's coming. So, that's something that probably wasn't explained to us very well until we went to hospital. And, I think everyone, you go, oh, great, she's going to hospital, she's going to go and get treatment, she's in there for however long, she's going to come out and she's all fixed and we're going to go back to normal life. But that's not the case. And that's where really the transition starts and the process starts and the learning starts as a family and all of that.
I think it's not also just you're going to be better. It's people then have this idea you come out of hospital and you go back to normal.
Mm,
But what was normal before is never going to be repaired. Like so much has been learned, so much has been done that you not only don't come out, say, healed or recovered, you come out with new versions of every person that's gone through recovery because you've all been through something that's quite traumatic and trying to force back to normal, it's not going to work. And I think a lot of the time that's why we see a lot of relapses is because people come out with this expectation that they're better and that they're healed. And then the people around them that are supporting them are just waiting for normal to knock them on the door and it all go back to where how it was. But it's not realistic.
no,
And
no, it's not. And you know what? When you come back out of hospital, that's when you need supervision.
yeah, more than
You
ever.
you can't just be dropped back at home and go back to school and, oh, you can feed yourself. No. This is where the most important work is. When you come out of hospital, that is the one opportunity you have to start the recovery right so you don't go back to hospital.
Mm.
I remember them saying when you go to hospital, oh, it's a respite. It's a respite for you and it's a respite for me. And I said, no, I'm going there to learn,
Mm.
and that's what I did. Because I knew when you came back out, I had to be educated and I had to be um, ready for the process of what was going to happen.
Mm. I'm going to jump a little bit here, but for some reason, this question just keeps popping into my head. Specifically around the idea that when obviously I went to hospital, we basically relocated a fair distance from where we lived initially, which split up our family. And this idea around, if you remember being back in that time, did you think our family was ever going to be split up permanently?
No.
So you never even thought that you and dad would separate, that we'd have a dysfunctional family, that I'd never be able to transition back home, that the boys and I would have a poor relationship, that you and I would have a poor relationship? Did you ever believe that that was a possibility for our family just to be broken?
Well, let's just start. Our family was broken. Our family was dysfunctional. Like, when you look at it, that's what it was. And, you know, I don't think anyone can say, oh, geez, I have this perfect family, because you don't. All right. Everyone's got their own personalities. Everyone's got their own little ticks and everyone's got their own opinions. And, coming together as a family is really difficult when you're going through these adolescent years. So, I never thought that your dad and I would separate because I believed in the strength of our relationship. And I probably knew that the relationships with your brothers would change only purely because of how you were acting. And but yeah, you and I look, I was willing to sacrifice that relationship that you and I had just to get you better because that was my goal. I didn't want to lose you. So I was willing to sacrifice, the mother-daughter so-called normal relationship that everyone projects that you should have. And if I didn't get to see you, get married or have a child or anything like that, that would have broken my heart more than, yeah, not,
Mm.
having the perfect relationship. And I've just come to learn there's no such thing as perfect, and there's no such thing as normal. Everyone's different, and everyone has to learn to get along. And sometimes that means arguments, and sometimes that means separation.
Mm.
But I think as long as you're always talking and keeping the communication open, things can be repaired.
Yeah, and I guess I would argue that my relationship with everyone in the family prior to my diagnosis wasn't what I would imagine it to be either. I feel like I was quite distant as it was, and I was quite shy and withdrawn.
Well,
What
you're
I,
harboring secrets, right? As well.
but I just feel like I was a very quiet, my perspective of growing up was I was in the shadows of our family. So I guess my perspective of, coming out of my eating disorder as my relationship with my family has strengthened a lot more. Yeah, it's different and it's still messy and it's still not meeting other people's expectations. But for me, it turned out very, very different to if I was still the person that never developed an eating disorder, because I don't think I would be as open or as honest or as connected to, say, you guys or even my brothers.
Hmm. Yeah, I'd agree with that. But I think the most important thing is there is still love there and there's still room for improvement. And that's all you can ask for. And you all still talk. Um, but the other thing is, if you're in trouble, they would be there to help you. And that's the most important thing. All of us would. We'd all be there for each other. And that's what family is.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing around, I guess, dynamics and the strength of our relationship moving forward. And that's once again emphasizing to people that maybe are in it right now and are struggling with trying to find that connection with their loved one that's going through an eating disorder, whether it is their partner, their sibling, or their child, is that right now it might feel like this is forever. And right now it might feel like you're never going to repair that relationship or that it's they're going to be withdrawn from you for forever, but it's not for forever. And they do turn around. It does look different and it's not going to be perfect, but they do come around if recovery is pursued. They do come around. A lot of the time it's not you. Maybe it's just looking at your delivery.
Correct. And it's about, and this is a really hard thing to do, and it's about being honest. Like, be honest about your feelings and don't be afraid that you might hurt the person with what you're about to say. If you deliver it in the right way, I feel you can get through anything, but not being honest with the person and not expressing how you feel about the situation, um, I think,
Your
and
feelings matter too, and I think that's imperative is that, as we've mentioned throughout, it's not just the person going through the eating disorder, but it's the ripple effect, who they also impact. It's the extended family as well as the intimate, immediate family. And it's so important to communicate how this is impacting your life and how you're struggling as well to that person.
yeah. I don't know how many times I had grandparents and friends, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do around Ashley. I'm like, you don't need to say or do anything. Just sit there and say hi. You don't need to comment. You don't need to look her up or down or have a judgment. Just treat her like she's a normal person and just say hi. Hi Ash, how you going? If she doesn't answer, that's fine. Don't take it personally, but just be there.
Mm.
And I think that's really hard for some people because some people have to comment or some people have to make
Okay,
remarks.
Kevin.
Yeah, and feel like they need to be heard about, oh geez, she's not looking real good, or and they have to make a point of saying that. You just say it under your breath. You don't have to say it out loud. Um,
But
but
not under your breath. Under your breath can be heard.
yeah, but I think, in my case, I really had to distance some friends too, because the comments that I used to get all the time was just, I was sick of having to defend them. I'm sick
Mm,
of trying to have to educate people to go, this is not something she's chosen and this is not something that's going to go away anytime soon. So either you support me in what I'm going through or you don't.
mm,
And,
sure.
and we lost a lot of friends over it
Mm,
because
yeah.
they just pure ignorance and didn't want to learn, or they just was just too hard basket,
Mm.
didn't fit their life. And those people, it's fine. That's on them. But,
Which I was about to say is okay because everyone
yeah,
acts differently, and
correct.
sometimes you just have to accept that not everyone is going to accept it. And you know that deep down, though, I always say to people, I'm in a very, very, I say, lucky position because I had a whole family that was there to support me. And once we figured out our roles, we were able to pursue recovery. And some people don't. They don't have family, they don't have parents around, they're over 18, they're out on their own. But I emphasize that just find an accountability buddy. So whether that's one person, whether it's a partner, a neighbor, a roommate, someone that you can trust to just be your accountability buddy. Because at the end of the day, that's all you were for me,
Mm,
was just someone, especially coming out of hospital and when I chose to pursue recovery, because I believe your eating disorder may not be your choice, but recovery is a choice.
mm,
And once I made that decision, I wanted to pursue recovery. I remember sitting down with you and you took the lead and I wanted you to take the lead. And all you need is that one person to devote a period of their life, their time to help you get through because you cannot get through this on your own. I believe that's one of the reasons why we see multiple relapses happen when it comes to eating disorders because you don't have that person in your corner, a person cheering you on, keeping you accountable, keeping the structure in place, and making sure that you're on the path to recovery because that eating disorder is not going away. And it's so easy to just listen to that first voice that pops in and just says, or just skip this one, or just miss this meal. Whereas you need someone to divert and to jump in and to challenge that mindset because you're not going to be capable at this period of time because it's what you've known for so long and
Mm.
patterns are hard to break on their own. So you need someone to be your pattern converter. And that can look like anyone in your life. You just have to find one person that's willing to support you through that. And as I said, it's not for forever. It's just to till you feel like you're strong enough not to choose that first voice, but choose the second voice that comes in. Because most of the time that second voice is yours.
Yeah, correct. And, and also too, if you've got a buddy that, is there and is willing to devote the time and they don't have to know anything, everything, as long as they know how to go and get help when you need it,
Mm.
that's important too.
Come up with a structure that works for both of you, whether it
Yeah,
is like
correct.
you're
Yep.
able to manage it, and then the days that you feel like you don't, you send them an alarming mo emoji, and then they're like, all right, I know what to do. I know straight away I've got to go over there, or I know straight away we've got to go for a walk, or I know straight away I've got to call that person's doctor or psychologist. Come up with something that's going to work for you and that you both can use.
Mm.
Um, I
Yeah,
think
and
that's
it's important, if it's not a family member and it is a friend that you don't see all the time, I think it's important to have a management plan written down because sometimes you can't talk.
mm,
The
like a
emotions are,
fire.
yeah,
I
the
like to.
emotions and the anxiety is that high that you can't talk. So maybe have it written down in a plan so you know what to follow, is important. We did that when I went away and things like that.
I like to
So,
say like your fireproof plan. So everyone has like an evacuation plan for where
yeah,
they live. So it's like, what is your evacuation plan for when shit hits the fan and you know you're not going to be able to communicate to people? What can you say? What can you send? And then that person already knows the steps that they have to follow in order to support you.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
This has been,
And I think it's important, and I mentioned this the other day to someone, it's important, which is what I learned, um, important that the words you say are followed up by the actions. So don't
yeah.
say you're going to support someone, then don't turn up.
Mm,
So I think it's really important that if you're going to say those words, the actions have to be followed with, on the same path as the words.
mm.
Otherwise, you're going to lose that person.
It is definitely a commitment, but it's one that's definitely worth committing for if you're able to support your loved
Mm,
one going through it.
yeah.
'Cause there's great outcomes on the other side. Can definitely vouch for that. I am going to now choose from our last question, which has been submitted in. I'm going to break it into two because we've had a lot of questions around this one. Obviously, there are a lot of father figures out there that may feel like they're sitting on the back end of recovery, or there are siblings out there that don't know what to do, or even friends that don't know where they sit in their place. So I kind of want to break this question down. So she's a parent and she's asking, is it important to include the siblings in recovery or not? And I want to change the questions to, is it important to include the siblings? Is it important to include the partner? And is it important to include friends? So I kind of want to tailor it to the point of each individual perspective because I know there are a lot of people out there that are friends with someone or that is their partner and they kind of want to know, is it important if just say like you're the caretaker mum or someone is the caretaker, is it important for them to make the decision to include those people in the recovery?
Only if they're going to be a positive impact.
And what
It's
does
a
that
short
look like? Positive impact.
Well, only if they can support positively. And that what I mean by that is, example, um, I remember a night where um, we had you at the dinner table and you were sitting there and you were struggling to eat your meal, and then comments started from your brothers and your dad. And then all of a sudden, that's not helpful and it's not positive. So I think if you're going to introduce people, you've got to make sure A, that they're educated on the situation, B, can they handle the situation if it does escalate, and are they capable to stay positive and not add fuel to the already fueling fire? So I think, it is very important that if you're going to introduce people to help, A, who are they helping? Are they helping the carer or are they helping the person going through it? What's their role? Yeah, and then go from there. Educated, supportive, can they handle it? Because there's nothing, because that's what the eating disorder wants. As I said before, it wants to create chaos. And if that person coming in is going to add to that chaos, then it's not going to be helpful because you're going to be managing two fires.
I'd agree. I am a structure person and I like to see things on paper. And I think if you're stuck in this situation, I would create a mind map that looks like a family tree. And I would look at everyone that's currently in that loved one's life. And in a similar sense, write down what is their role, what you believe their role is, and then go to them and say if they're willing to create or have a positive impact with this role in that person's life during their recovery. And if they're not, once again, it's okay. Not everyone is up for it. Not everybody is able to come to the table and create a positive impact. There's nothing wrong with that person. It's just they're not suited for recovery and they're not suited to support that person, and that is okay. But I would look at it and map it out in terms of, as you said, Mum, is like the roles and are they going to actually fulfill their role to be the best version of themselves for that person? And as we mentioned, sometimes those roles are like my younger brother, just doing the fun things and being the person to distract me. Sometimes it's friends coming in and just continuing to invite that person out. Like sometimes that person might not even go out, but it's just continuing to remind that person that there is a life waiting for them when they're ready. And then sometimes it's the father figure that, you say, Mum jumped in and were the leader of my recovery, but it was also nice to have moments with Dad where we could talk about sport, or he talked about, reminded me of memories, or made me laugh, or had jokes. And even like my nan, we were pen pals for a really long time. And that's what the role that she took on was creating projects and creating little things and hobbies
Distraction.
for me to do. Yeah. And so roles are diverse. So I think, as you said, if they're willing to create a positive impact on on their life, there's no reason for them to be removed. It may just be take them out of the therapy and the
Yeah.
recovery aspect, the medical, keep that to
Yeah.
the medical team and the accountability buddy.
Yeah. And I think if you remember, like I remember I used to, and at some stages we used to eat separately. Not everyone can has dinner together now as well. That's a different culture. But, the boys used to come and eat first and then we would come down. And if you remember, Dad used to take you straight outside and you'd walk the streets and look at the stars while I composed myself.
Mm,
So, there's definitely different strategies and ways to work it out. You just got to find out what works for your family, and also don't be afraid for you as the carer to have a support buddy because that's
mm,
important too.
mm. And communicate, as you said. I think
Yeah.
that's one of the most powerful things. And
Yeah.
I want to remind people as well, I know we've spoken a lot around potentially my not as warming to my dad and his way of delivering during my recovery. And as a sign of hope, if anyone is going through it, is my dad's and I relationship is a really beautiful relationship right now that I'm so appreciative that I have. And I'm able to talk to him so openly. And dad has changed so much. Like he is so compassionate and he is so patient and he's so understanding where now he listens a lot. Like he's still not perfect, but he listens and he's softer in his delivery, which I think has shaped him a lot into a person that he now tells me that he's grateful that he now can be, not just for me, but in his work environment and for my brothers as well and in his relationship with you. So there is a silver lining, and even if it is hard right now, relationships can be repaired and they do come around. It takes time, it takes a lot of lessons, and sometimes a lot of hard conversations. But relationships are hard work and they're constantly evolving and they adapt and they grow, and it's going to be ugly sometimes. But if everyone's willing to communicate and just try to understand. You may not always understand, but all people want is just for someone to try to understand them. And that's just not the person going through it, but it's also the people supporting someone.
Yeah, correct. And harsh things are going to get said and mean words are going to be said. And I think you've just got to learn to water off a duck's back sometimes and not take it personally. And that takes practice and time. But if you can learn that sometimes the mean things that are said is not coming from your heart, it's coming from frustration and the illness. I think that's I don't know, a first step to try and work on is a good step
Mm.
because yeah, emotions can, if they grab hold, then it just escalates. So if you can kind of say, well, I hear what you're saying, but I don't think you really mean that right now. I'm just going to ignore that and let's move on. It was a really good strategy.
Mm.
Or,
Put up a back.
yeah, or I used to say to you, well, that's anorexia talking, and I'm not going to listen to anorexia. I'm only going to listen to Ashlee. So
Mm.
that was another good one I used to do. It kind of just normalized it and deflected it from,
Separation.
yeah, well, deflected it from me, you attacking me personally. I just knew it wasn't you.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
A powerful conversation, one that I'm very grateful that we had because there are a lot of people that go unmentioned and unnoticed when it comes to recovery, and those people need to be heard. And I can only sympathize for those people that are currently going through it or in the middle of it. So I hope that people out there that are listening did take something away from it. Once again, if you have any questions, please reach out to us at The Secret Burden, whether on our social media accounts or via the podcast apps, website, or links. We are extremely grateful to have the community that we have, that we're able to engage in and start these conversations. And we thank you once again for listening. Thank you, Mum, as well, for jumping on and sharing your insights again today.
Thank
We
you,
will have you
Ash.
guys all again next month for another episode. But thank you once again for listening, and we'll see you all soon.
Bye.